2025 C8 Corvette ZR1 A Hypercar. Now that the official specs on the ZR1 are out and they've absolutely blown away everybody's expectations, this is a fun topic to debate. So at a high level, here are the absolutely ridiculous numbers the new ZR1 is going to bring. It has a 5.5 liter twin turbo flat plane crank V8, the LT7, that will make 1,064 horsepower and 828 pound-feet of torque, revving to 8,000 RPM. Yes, that is over 1,000 horsepower from a factory Corvette. It will do over 215 miles an hour, the quarter mile in under 10 seconds. And this is a pretty ridiculous stat: 80 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour, back to 80 miles an hour in under 25 seconds. These are all just absolutely jaw-dropping, staggering numbers. It's got crazy aerodynamics. With the ZTK track attack package, you have this absolutely massive rear wing. There's no longer a front trunk anymore. Instead, you have this massive ducting for aerodynamics and cooling. And here's another crazy fact. The turbos produce so much just thrust that there's measurable thrust out of the exhaust, 37 pounds specifically. It'll shoot flames during the day. So obviously the ZR1 is just a combination of utterly ridiculous numbers. And I think we can all agree that for sure, without a single doubt, it's a supercar at this point, right? It's beyond supercar levels of performance, literally touching upon hypercar. But that's where you get this debate now, right? Can it be considered a hypercar? What is a hypercar? And I know this conversation topic has no correct answer. There will be no resolution. There will be so much bickering and disagreement and differing opinions, which is why it's a fun topic to discuss. So, what exactly is a hypercar? There's really no formal definition, just kind of like supercars, right? The line is blurry between sports car to supercar, supercar to hypercar, especially as technology and performance has advanced over the last couple generations of cars. Hypercars are a relatively newer thing, right? The only time that I think hypercar is really formally defined as a Le Mans hypercar class, right? But in the realm of road cars, to me, a hypercar has 4 different qualities. 1, it must be extremely limited. 2, price. It has to be very expensive, $1 million and up. 3, extreme performance and or pushing the envelope in terms of technology. Something just different, totally beyond even normal supercars in terms of technology or something like that. And lastly, this one is the really hard one to measure and quantify: prestige. Prestige is a factor when it comes to supercars and hypercars. So let's break those down a little bit. When you think about a supercar, you think about your Ferraris, your Lamborghinis. When you think about hypercar, you gotta go up a tier, right? Bugatti. That's one of the first things that come to mind for me, right? The Bugatti Veyron, arguably one of the first of the hypercars. And the subsequent iterations, you have the new generation of the Bugatti Chiron and now the Bugatti Tourbillon. So we're talking that echelon of car. We've also got the hypercar Holy Trinity when they came out with the hybridization hypercars, right? You have the McLaren P1, the Ferrari LaFerrari, and the Porsche 918 Spyder. Those were the absolute top tiers of mainstream supercar manufacturers, right? Porsche builds the 911, Ferrari will build the 458 and the 488 and so forth. McLaren has the 12C, the 650S, and so forth. So those we can all agree are hypercars. You have Koenigsegg, you have Pagani, really low volume boutique, and those cars absolutely check every single one of the requirements. There's not a single car that ever came out of Koenigsegg or Pagani that doesn't fulfill the rarity, the price, the pushing the edge of technology, and the prestige, right? They only sell 7-figure plus bespoke artwork and engineering masterpieces. Pagani, I mean, it's the carbon fiber, the titanium, the craftsmanship, and of course it has a twin turbo V12 sourced from AMG, right? But Koenigsegg, on the other hand, has all of the craftsmanship and everything, the carbon fiber and so forth, but then they really define pushing the edge envelope of technology. I mean, look at the Regera, no transmission, hybrid, absolutely unlike anything else out there. Their cars are just utterly ridiculous and without a single doubt a hypercar. If we go back, actually there's another era, like the older kind of classics era of hypercar too. The McLaren F1 is a hypercar. I don't think anybody could disagree. Fastest car in the world when it came out, worth so much money, tens of millions of dollars for one, exceedingly rare. Obviously, the performance, even by today's modern standards, is remarkable. You have the F40, the F50, the Enzo, the flagship Ferraris, the Maserati MC12, it's rare, and things like that, right? So these cars, when they roll down the street, you know it's a hypercar, absolutely a hypercar. In today's day and age, actually, I would almost argue we have too many hypercars. There was a time when it was like special, right? You had pretty much you buy the Bugatti, Koenigsegg, and then the Paganis, and then you had the hypercars come out from McLaren, P1, LaFerrari, and the 918, the hybrid ones. But these days, if you want to spend a couple $1 million on a car, it's like almost too easy. You've got the modern iteration, so what are some of them? AMG Project 1, the Aston Martin Valkyrie. We have smaller volume ones, the Hennessy Venom F5, the Zinger 21C. Koenigsegg is still coming out with so many different models, including a 4-seater hypercar with a Gemera now. I mean, that thing's 2,300 horsepower. Definitely a hypercar, doesn't matter. It has 8 cup holders. It's still a hypercar. We have the Pagani Utopia. You have the low volume like track specials from, I mean, the FXX program from Ferrari, but then you have the McLaren Solus GT. You've got the Lamborghini SCV12. You got the special Astons. You have the speedster cars, the Ferrari Monza. There's so many of these hypercars that the hypercar class is almost becoming overpopulated. But you see, all of those cars I just listed fulfill those requirements. Even like the most common of hypercars, not over 1,000. Like the 918 Spider could be arguably like one of the most commonly produced hypercars, and it was just under 1,000, right? Everything else is in the low hundreds or sometimes a couple dozen. Koenigsegg, 80 cars per most of their models in the past. I know they're making more with some of the new ones. Some of these, you have like 5 of them in the world, right? The really special Bugatti iterations off the Chiron platform and so forth. There's like, what are there, 20 Divos or something like that? So we can all agree these hypercars are really rare. The ZR1, immediately people, I was like, this is hypercar levels of performance without a single doubt, right? You're talking 1,064 horsepower. The Bugatti Veyron came out with 1,001 horsepower, and that was mind-blowing. You look at the power numbers of the P1, the Paganis. I mean, 1,000 horsepower is still just absolutely astonishing from an internal combustion engine. This argument gets a little funky because of EVs. And there are EV hypercars, the Romas Navara, the Pininfarina Battista, the Lotus Avaya, and they're really, really fast. But then there's also regular mainstream EV sedans, the Tesla Plaid, the Lucid Air Sapphire, and so forth. Heck, even the Rivian quad motors over 1,000 horsepower, right? You can hit that power number very easily now. So I actually don't argue that absolute pure performance should be a defining metric for hypercar. It rather needs to be just beyond the norm in terms of pushing technology, whether it's exotic usage of materials, crazy over-the-top engineering. Something about it is just you don't find in regular run-of-the-mill supercars. For a little bit of time, hybridization, all right, calm down, radar detector. For a little bit, the hybridization with the P1 LaFerrari 918 was really special. But now kind of most of the supercars are going into a hybridization platform, so that's no longer the special defining thing. Koenigsegg does it the best, I still think, right? Like their cars, I mean, the Regera doesn't have a transmission. The way the Jesko revs, right? The tiny little, what is it called? What is the little electric motor? Something spark, antimatter, whatever they call it for the Gemera, right? It's really just beyond the norm. The CC850 with the crazy transmission, Bugatti, a W16 was unheard of anything else, right? There's nothing else had an engine like that. Quad turbo W16, now with a tourbillon, a naturally aspirated V16. So you see, they're just pushing beyond the norm. The ZR1, the power number is there, the performance is absolutely there, but I wouldn't say it goes so far beyond the norm of another really, really special forced induction engine, right? But see, I'm self-arguing with myself because 1,064 horsepower out of a twin-turbo flat-plane crank V8, McLaren hasn't done that. The 720S became the 765 LT, now we have the 750S. They did not do the 1000 LT. Like, this is just not normal for a manufacturer to do something like this. We don't know the price yet for the ZR1, but I can guarantee without a single doubt that it will not be $1 million. Like, that's for sure. I still think it's gonna be close to like 200, maybe starting in the high 100s. A lot of people say that's not possible, right? It's gonna be 150K starting. I mean, it would be awesome if it is, and yeah, the regular C8 Stingray starts at 70, the Z06 here starts at just over 100, 110, so yeah, $40,000 increase, but that power jump and the performance jump is almost too much. I mean, 150K for 1,000 horsepower, what? I still think it's going to be in the low 200s range, and fully justified, right? I think it's going to demolish every supercar in the world, which is again why you might be able to argue that it's a borderline hypercar, but price, it won't do it. And I think price is important for hypercars because they're also just, it's something to differentiate it from the regular run-of-the-mill supercars. It has to be so much more extreme and expensive. They could buy multiples of the lower tier supercar, right? For one LaFerrari, you could have a fleet of pretty much the entire rest of the Ferrari lineup. It just has to be that way to give it that level of exclusivity and rarity that matches a limited production. The less you have of something, when you have matching demand, the higher the price, right? Supply and demand. And when these cars have such low production and such high price, it just adds to the whole rarity factor there too. Prestige. Prestige is impossible to measure, really, right? But the manufacturers that build hypercars all have to have a history and respect of building only cars that are extremely, extremely desirable at that tier, and or the car is their halo car at the top of the portfolio. Like Porsche builds the Macan, I know, right? And that's not the most prestigious car in the world. Porsche itself has such strong branding, and the 918, the Carrera GT, the 959 is their kind of legacy of highest tier hypercar, halo car. What's a good example? If Mitsubishi, if Kia wants to build a hypercar and on paper it matches every single aspect of the Bugatti Tourbillon, it wouldn't make any sense. There's no way they would ever do it, right? But people would be like, no, I'm not paying that much. Like, I'd go get the Bugatti, right? So that's what the prestige factor. So when we get to the Corvette ZR1, Corvette is a prestigious brand. They have a long storied history, iconic American sports cars. They've done generations of just really insane performance cars. The C7 ZR1, the C6 ZR1. And that name carries some weight to it. But it's not the same level of prestige. It's because at the end of the day, it's still a Chevrolet. And if you take it to a dealership, you might get a Chevrolet Malibu rental car as your service loaner or something like that. You see the example I'm trying to illustrate right now? It doesn't carry the same rarity, the same air and overall treatment. So from that regard, the ZR1 can't ever be hypercar level. Wait, pavement ends. Oh, I am not going to go that way. Yeah, something the Z06 and ZR1 are not is an off-road Storado / Dakar style sports car, supercar. Clear for a 3-point turn. I'm just driving around randomly. We'll go this way. So at the end of the day, to me, the ZR1 checks the box in terms of performance, its hypercar levels of performance, but I think that's been diluted because of EVs. So we can't really only look at it on paper that way. It is without a single doubt to me a supercar. At the very, very top echelon of supercar. We're talking like Ferrari SF90 type of thing, right? It makes more power than SF90. I'm pretty sure it'll hold its own against an SF90 and pretty much any other supercar from any other manufacturer. Lamborghini Revuelto, sure, ZR1, take it on. 296, go for it, right? Not a single problem. I'm really curious to see what Porsche does in a 992 3RS or 2RS, GT2 RS, because, I mean, they see what Corvette's done to the ZR1. Mustang has the GTD now. If they come out with just, hey, it's got 740 horsepower, everybody's gonna be like, but. So maybe they'll make that one 1,000 horsepower hybridized twin turbo flat six crazy GT2 RS to take on the ZR1 and the Mustang GTD on the track. So I think without a single doubt, ZR1 is a supercar, but not quite a hypercar. The ZR1 is going to be just staggeringly epic in every single way. I am firmly convinced that car is going to be able to demolish essentially everything short of a proper like track focused either actual track car or a really, really track focused hypercar. Because this car, the Z06 with the Z07 pack, it was as fast around VIR during car and driver's lightning lap testing as a 918 Spider. There was a 10-year gap. Entire technology has really advanced. But in terms of modern cars, like this is neck and neck with the McLarens, faster than a Huracan, like GT3 RS, cars that twice the price, twice to three times the price sometimes. So when you take this and then you just add steroids essentially, right? Twin turbos, an extra 300 horsepower, even bigger wing, more aero, more stickiness, bigger, I think the brakes are even bigger too, the carbon ceramics. It's gonna be sheer ridiculousness. And even if they build the Zora, the rumored hybridized, where they put the E-Ray front motor, that would be what, 1,200, 1,300 horsepower, really the poor man's SF90, but even faster than SF90 probably. It's still hard to say it's a hypercar just because of the other factors, the rarity, the price, and the prestige of that model slash the sub-brand. What do you think? Comment below. Is the ZR1 a hypercar? Should the ZR1 be considered a hypercar? I don't think so. I think it's just the absolute top tier of supercar with hypercar performance. Similar to my Z06 right here. This, I always struggle. I don't think this is a supercar. It's the very, very top tier of sports car with supercar levels of performance, because similarly to like the quality is listed out for hypercar, you got kind of the similar stuff for supercar, just distilled down a little bit, right? You pull this next to a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, right? The Lamborghini Ferrari will still carry a little bit more of that weight to the brand. This is ultimately evolution of the Corvette Stingray, right? On the inside, I might as well be in a well-optioned Corvette Stingray, and it, to the casual observer, looks exactly the same. My girlfriend just now was able to figure out the difference between a C7 and a C8, right? But a C8 Stingray and a C8 Z06 and a C8 E-Ray, it's gonna look pretty much the same. Same as the ZR1. She goes, what's the difference, right? It's got a bigger wing, but without the big wing, it's gonna look the same. So I still don't know if this is a supercar. I don't know if I've owned a supercar before, right? My R8s are the closest that I've had, but even then, they're just the upper tier of sports car, not quite supercar. Supercar, I think, Lamborghini, Ferrari, and upwards. There's a lot of cars that blur that line, too, of is it a supercar? And we've argued about it since they came out. The R35 GTR, supercar levels of performance. Is it a supercar? Some people say yes, some people say no. 911 Turbo S, supercar levels of performance. Is it a supercar? I don't know, right? Like, because it shares the same platform with a 911 Carrera S. And to normal people, a base 911 and a Turbo S look exactly the same. The GT3 RS kind of falls trapped to the same thing. GT2 RS. Are they top tier sports cars or supercars? And I think we have to have like essentially subclasses now, right? You have sports car, low, middle, high tier, and then supercar, low, middle, high tier, and hypercar, low, middle, and high tier, right? It's just this endless crazy class system. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. This is just a fun conversational topic to discuss and debate. It's just, I mean, I cannot believe they put out that kind of power for the ZR1. I really genuinely was expecting like 850-ish horsepower, because that's like a normal progression, right? You want to leave some space for higher models. Like, what is the C9 ZR1 gonna have? 1,500 horsepower? Like, what in the world? They're just gonna sell this to people who have money, right? I don't need any more driver training. Here you go. You have enough money. Here's the car. Have fun. Please don't die. I am just totally randomly driving around. I have no idea where I am. It's been so long since I've driven the Z06. Actually, probably over a month at this point. So I was like, you know what? This is a fun topic. I wanted to film a video talking about, is the ZR1, should it be considered a hypercar? So I was like, let me pull the Z06 out, stretch its legs a little bit, and just have this fun debate. Here's another example. The GMA T50. Is that a hypercar? Expensive, pushes the envelope of engineering, technology, performance, and so forth. It's going to be rare. Prestige, GMA as a company doesn't have history per se, but Gordon Murray obviously does with the McLaren F1. And when those pull up to your local Cars and Coffee, be like, yeah, that goes in the hypercar section. But the ZR1 is going to be faster and all-out performance. It'll be a different experience, right? Manual V12, 3 seating. It's going to be really unique for the GMA, but then the ZR1 is going to probably just annihilate everything. So you see where it gets really funky. And I think ultimately the most important thing has to be, it's ultimately actually external. The perception by the general automotive audience and also just the general public, right? You have enthusiasts and you have normal people. The undeniable supercars are the ones that pull up and everybody goes, okay, that person has a really, really cool car. They know it's a Ferrari, they know it's a Lamborghini. They don't even know what exact model it is, but it's like, yep, that's a Ferrari, yep, that's a Lamborghini. That's a supercar without a doubt. Hypercar, even the normal, yeah, if you show up in a Bugatti, people are like, oh, that's a Bugatti. It's permeated like popular culture and like everybody has heard of Bugatti and the brand and so forth. Even if you may not know what kind of engine is in a Chiron or a Veyron or so forth. Yeah, and these low volume boutique hypercars make it harder to like think about that. But regardless, if somebody rolls up in a Koenigsegg, people are just gonna be like, what in the world is that spaceship looking thing? It is so far beyond the norm of even regular realm sports cars and supercars, they can tell. And the ZR1 is a Corvette at the end of the day. Nothing wrong with that. I love my Corvette, right? You're talking to somebody who has a Z06, and I have absolutely loved every single mile in this car, and I've kept it. But if I'm struggling to say if this is a supercar, ZR1 not a hypercar, ZR1's a supercar. Those are my final thoughts. Whee! At no point driving this car have I ever been like, this does not have enough power. I definitely need more power. The ZR1's going to be just absolutely ballistic. Can't believe they kept the flat plane crank, 8,000 RPM, and honestly, 8,000 versus 8,600, you're not going to really be able to tell, especially at the speed you'll be going in the ZR1. It's like when I remember the previous generation GT3 RS, 991.1 GT3 RS 4-liter rev to 8,800 instead of 9,000, and people are like, oh, literally 200 RPM. It's like, you can't tell me you can feel the difference of 200 RPM when you're at red line, almost 9,000 RPM, because I certainly did not, and I've done many full throttle pulls to red line and regular GT3s and GT3 RSs. I cannot tell, 200 RPM difference. What you're gonna tell is the torque and the power. Where am I? Oh. I just did a big loop. Figured out where I am. Anyway, super informal video. Just thought it'd be fun to spark the debate. Should the ZR1 be considered a hypercar? If you argue yes and you can counter my arguments, comment below. If you agree, comment below. If you think it's just a supercar, comment below. If you think it's not a supercar, then you're crazy. Because no doubt that thing is supercar levels of everything. Presence, performance, price. All of it. Z06. Would I like a ZR1? Absolutely. Am I happy with my Z06? Also, absolutely. And on that note, we'll conclude this video. Thanks for watching. Check out my other ZR1 videos that are currently up on the channel. Comment below. Let's have some fun debate. Thanks for watching.